The year was 2247 and humanity had finally reached beyond its home. 12 worlds now carried the flag of Earth. Generation ships had traveled for decades to plant human colonies on distant planets. The new warp drives were slow and clumsy, but they worked. Humanity was proud of what it had built. They had no idea they were being watched. Far across the galaxy, in a massive space station that orbited a dying star, the masters of 400 star systems reviewed their latest discovery. The Velathron hegemony had ruled this part of the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered 47 species. Some they had enslaved. Others they had destroyed. A few they had allowed to serve as soldiers and workers in their great empire. High Strategos Kethvor stood before the Council of Elders. His gray skin was smooth and unmarked by age, though he had lived for 600 years. His 4 eyes studied the holographic display floating before him. It showed a small yellow star and the primitive creatures that lived around it. "Humans," said one of the elders, her voice filled with boredom. "Another young species reaching for the stars. What is your assessment?" Kethvor waved his long fingers through the display. Images of human cities appeared. Their ships, their weapons, their short, soft bodies. "They are Class 7, he said. "Barely worth our attention. Their technology is primitive. Their ships are slow. They have no shields, no plasma weapons, no understanding of dimensional warfare." He made a sound that was the Velathron equivalent of a laugh. "They do not even live for a full century. By the time one of them learns anything useful, they die." The council murmured in agreement. They had seen this before many times. Young species always thought they were special. They always learned the truth. "You will handle this personally?" asked the eldest council member. Kethvor bowed his head. "One battle fleet will be more than enough. I will give them the standard choice: submission or extinction." 3 months later, Kethvor's fleet emerged from warp space near Earth. 20 massive warships, each one larger than a human city. They blotted out the stars as they took position around the blue planet. On Earth, alarms screamed in every city. The Terran Compact, humanity's unified government, called an emergency session. President Elena Vasquez stood before the council, her face pale but her voice steady. "We are receiving a transmission," she said. "They call themselves the Velathron hegemony." The alien message was simple and direct. Humanity would become a subject species. They would pay tribute. They would provide workers and resources. They would obey all hegemony laws. In exchange, they would be allowed to live. They had 72 hours to decide. The debate raged through the night. Some argued for surrender. The aliens were clearly more advanced. Fighting would only bring death. Others refused to accept slavery. Humanity had not struggled for thousands of years just to bow before new masters. President Vasquez listened to both sides. Then she received another message. This one came from Proxima Centauri b, humanity's closest colony. 400,000 people lived there. Families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers. The message was only 3 words. "They are firing." Kethvor had grown tired of waiting. These humans talked too much. They needed to understand their place in the universe. So he gave the order, and his ships turned their weapons on the colony world. The destruction took only minutes. Plasma beams turned cities to ash. Orbital strikes shattered the surface. When it was over, nothing lived on Proxima Centauri b. 400,000 humans had been erased from existence. Kethvor sent a new message to Earth. "You have seen what we can do. You have 48 hours remaining. Choose wisely." He expected terror. He expected surrender. He expected the humans to beg for mercy like so many species before them. He did not expect silence. For 6 hours, no transmission came from Earth. Kethvor waited, confident in his victory. The humans were probably fighting among themselves, trying to decide who would deliver their surrender. Then finally a transmission came. It was broadcast on all frequencies, sent not just to his fleet but to every ship and station in the Sol system. President Vasquez appeared on the screen. Her eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set hard. "People of Earth," she said, "today we lost 400,000 of our brothers and sisters. They were murdered without warning by an empire that sees us as insects, as animals to be tamed or killed." She paused. When she spoke again, Her voice was cold as space. The Velothrian hegemony has given us a choice, slavery or death. But they have forgotten something. They have forgotten that humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have climbed out of every grave that was dug for us. On his command ship, HFY leaned forward. Something in the human's voice made his skin feel strange. "We will not surrender," President Vasquez continued. "We will not bow. We will not forget what happened today. To the Velothrian hegemony, I have only this to say." She looked directly into the camera. Her eyes burned with a fire that HFY had never seen in any conquered species. "You will regret this." The transmission ended. HFY sat back in his command chair. Around him, his officers exchanged glances. One of them, a young sub-commander named Vethra, spoke carefully. "High Strategos, should we proceed with the invasion?" "Of course," HFY said, but for the first time in his long life, he felt a small seed of doubt, not fear. That would be ridiculous. These humans were nothing. Their ships were toys. Their weapons were primitive. But something in that woman's eyes had disturbed him. He pushed the feeling aside. He had conquered 12 worlds personally. He had crushed species far more advanced than these soft, short-lived creatures. In a month, Earth would be a hegemony colony. In a year, no one would remember the name humanity. He gave the order to begin the invasion. On Earth, as Velothron dropships filled the sky, people did not run. They did not hide. In every city and every country, humans watched the alien ships descend. Many of them knew they would not survive what was coming. But they also knew something that HFY did not understand. Something that his 12,000 years of conquest had never taught him. Humanity had been fighting against impossible odds since the first human picked up a rock to defend their family. They had faced predators with nothing but sticks. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats. They had split the atom and walked on the moon. They had always been the underdog, and they had always survived. In a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Yara Santos gathered her team. They were soldiers, scientists, engineers. They were the first members of what would become the resistance. "Today we lost a battle," she told them. "Today we became slaves. But tomorrow we start fighting back. And we do not stop until every last one of these invaders is gone from our sky." No one cheered. The pain was too fresh, the odds too terrible. But every person in that room nodded. Every person understood. The Velothrans had made a mistake. They had measured humanity by their technology and their lifespans. They had not measured their will to survive. It was a mistake they would come to regret. 3 years had passed since the Velothran ships first darkened Earth's sky. The invasion had been swift and brutal. Human armies had fought with everything they had, but it was like throwing rocks at a hurricane. The aliens had technology that humans could barely understand. Their shields stopped bullets and missiles. Their weapons turned tanks into melted metal. In 6 months, it was over. The Terran Compact surrendered. Earth and all its colonies became property of the Velothran hegemony. High Strategos HFY reported his victory to the Council of Elders. Another species conquered. Another world added to the empire. The war had been so easy that he barely thought about it anymore. He left a small occupation force behind and moved on to other matters. That was his second mistake. In the ruins of Sao Paulo, Commander Yara Santos crouched in the shadows of a collapsed building. 3 years of hiding had changed her. Her hair was cut short. Scars marked her brown skin. Her eyes had the hard look of someone who had seen too much death. But she was still fighting. "How many?" she whispered to the young man beside her. Paulo checked his scanner. It was a crude device built from stolen parts and human cleverness. 6 guards, 2 walking patrol, 4 at the supply depot. Yara nodded. 6 Velothrans. 3 years ago, that would have been impossible odds. The aliens were taller than humans, stronger, and their armor could stop anything short of a direct rocket hit. But 3 years had taught the resistance many things. "Team 2, are you in position?" Yara spoke into her radio. "Ready," came the reply. "Team 3? Ready. On my mark." She counted down in her head. Then she gave the signal. The attack happened in seconds. A homemade explosive detonated under the patrol route, sending the 2 walking guards flying. Before they could recover, resistance fighters emerged from hidden positions. They did not use guns. Guns were too loud and too weak. Instead, they used weapons that Velathran engineers would have laughed at 1 year ago. Crossbows firing bolts tipped with acid that ate through alien armor. Nets made from wire that tangled limbs and wings. Simple pit traps covered with false ground. Humanity had gone backward in technology, and somehow it had made them more dangerous. In 40 seconds, all 6 guards were dead. "Move," Yara ordered. "We have 3 minutes before their backup arrives." Her team rushed into the supply depot. They grabbed everything they could carry: alien food packs, medical supplies, power cells. Most importantly, they grabbed pieces of Velathran technology, broken communicators, damaged weapons, anything that could be studied. 3 minutes later, they vanished into the underground tunnels that now connected resistance cells across the continent. Far above the Earth, in his orbital command station, Subcommander Vethra reviewed the latest reports. His 4 eyes blinked with confusion. "Another attack?" he said to his aide. "That is the 15th this month." "Yes, Subcommander. The humans are becoming more organized." Vethra studied the maps showing attack locations. When the occupation began, human resistance had been scattered and weak. Small groups attacking randomly, easily crushed. But something had changed in the last year. The attacks were coordinated now. Supply lines were being targeted specifically. Important officers were being assassinated. "This is not normal," Vethra muttered. "Other conquered species resist for a few years, then accept their fate. These humans are getting stronger." He pulled up records from 47 previous conquests. Every species followed the same pattern: initial resistance, gradual acceptance, eventual integration into the hegemony. It took time, sometimes decades, but it always happened. The humans were not following the pattern. In a secret laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Alexei Volkov had not slept in 3 days. The old scientist's white hair was wild and his eyes were bloodshot, but his hands were steady as he worked on the device before him. It was a Velathran communication module. His team had captured it 6 months ago, and since then, they had been trying to understand how it worked. The technology was incredibly advanced. It used principles of physics that human scientists had only theorized about. But Alexei was very good at his job, and he had help. "Run the sequence again," he said to his assistant, Maria. She typed commands into their computer. Lights flickered on the alien device. Strange symbols appeared on its screen. "It is working," Maria breathed. "We are actually reading their communications." Alexei allowed himself a small smile. 3 years of work, 3 years of failures and frustrations and watching good people die. But now they had something precious. They could hear everything the Velathrans were saying to each other. He immediately sent word to Commander Santos and the other resistance leaders. Within days, the entire human resistance network knew about Velathran troop movements before they happened. They knew about supply shipments before they arrived. They knew about planned raids before they began. The Velathrans had no idea how the humans were suddenly 1 step ahead. Their encryption was unbreakable. No species had ever cracked it in less than 200 years. The humans had done it in 3. But Alexei was not satisfied. He had studied the captured technology carefully, and he had found something that made his heart beat faster. Among the salvaged equipment was a damaged warp drive, the device that allowed Velathran ships to travel faster than light. For months, his team had worked to understand it. They had failed again and again. The technology was too complex, too different from anything humans had built. Then one night, Alexei had a breakthrough. "It is not magic," he told his team. "It is just physics we have not discovered yet. And if they can do it, so can we." He worked for weeks without rest. He rebuilt damaged components. He wrote new programs to control the drive. He tested and failed and tested again. And then, on a cold night in February, 3 years and 7 months after the invasion began, Dr. Alexei Volkov activated a Velathran warp drive using human hands and human understanding. The small test ship vanished from the laboratory and reappeared on the other side of the moon. Humanity could now travel to the stars. Alexei sent a coded message to the resistance leadership. It was short and simple. "The cage is open." In São Paulo, Commander Santos read the message and felt something she had not felt in 3 years. Hope. Real hope. The Velathrons thought they had won. They thought humanity was broken and defeated, just waiting to be absorbed into their empire like all the others. They had no idea that beneath their feet, in hidden laboratories and underground bunkers, humans were learning their secrets. They had no idea that the resistance was about to become something much more dangerous. Santos called a meeting of all cell leaders. It was risky. If the Velathrans discovered them, they would all die. But this news was too important for coded messages. "We have warp technology," she told them. "We can leave the system. We can reach other worlds." The room was silent. Then someone spoke. "We can escape?" Santos shook her head. "No, we are not going to escape. We are going to spread." She pulled up a star map showing the Velathron hegemony. 400 systems, dozens of conquered species, an empire that had lasted 12,000 years. "They think they are dealing with one small species on one small planet," Santos said. "We are going to show them something they have never seen before. We are going to show them what happens when you give humanity a reason to fight." The war was about to change, and the Velathron hegemony had no idea what was coming. 10 years had passed since the invasion of Earth. The Velathron hegemony still believed they had won. Their reports showed a conquered planet slowly accepting its fate. Resistance attacks had decreased. Human workers were being shipped to mining colonies across the empire. Everything was proceeding according to plan. They could not have been more wrong. On a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant in the Keth system, 3 Velathran soldiers patrolled a prison camp. The camp held members of the Vorath, a species conquered 800 years ago. The Vorath were large, strong creatures with thick gray skin and 4 arms. They had been fierce warriors once. Now they worked in the mines, digging precious metals for their masters. The soldiers were bored. Nothing ever happened here. The Vorath had been broken centuries ago. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, shapes moved. By the time the backup power activated, all 3 soldiers were dead. Standing over their bodies was a human woman with short, dark hair and cold eyes. "Clear," she said into her radio. Her team emerged from the shadows. There were only 12 of them. 12 humans who had traveled across the galaxy in a stolen ship to reach this frozen moon. They had been planning this mission for months. "Open the cells," the woman ordered. Within minutes, hundreds of Vorath prisoners stood in the camp's central area. They were confused and afraid. Many had never seen a human before. The woman climbed onto a crate so they could see her. She was small compared to the massive Vorath, but something in her voice made them listen. "My name is Captain Diana Chen," she said. "I am human. My species was conquered 5 years ago, just like yours was conquered long ago. But we did not accept defeat. We have been fighting back, and now we are here to help you do the same." One of the Vorath stepped forward. He was old, his gray skin marked with scars from decades of hard labor. "Help us? How can you help us? The hegemony controls everything. They have ships and weapons. We have nothing." Captain Chen smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You have us," she said, "and we brought gifts." Her team opened several large containers. Inside were weapons, not Velothran weapons, but new ones. Human designs built with stolen alien technology, simple, reliable, and deadly. "We cannot free you today," Chen told the Vorath, "but we can teach you. We can show you how to fight, how to organize, how to hurt them, and when the time comes, you will not be alone." This same scene played out on 40 worlds across the hegemony. Human teams traveling in small ships with stolen warp drives contacted every conquered species they could find. The Vorath, the Kelthari, the Minsari, the Drathan. Species that had been slaves for centuries. The humans did not promise easy victory. They promised something better. They promised a chance. Operation Prometheus, the Resistance called it, named after the ancient human myth of a god who stole fire and gave it to mankind. Now humans were stealing knowledge and hope and giving it to the galaxy. Back on Earth, Commander Yara Santos coordinated the largest secret operation in human history. She had aged in the 10 years since the invasion. Gray streaked her dark hair. Lines marked her face, but her will had not weakened. "Report from Team 7, her aide announced. "The Drothan uprising has begun. 3 mining colonies are now under rebel control." Santos nodded. "And Team 12? They have made contact with the Kelthari resistance. The Kelthari are requesting weapons and tactical advisors. Santos marked the update on her map. The galaxy was starting to burn, and the Velathrons still did not understand why. In the Great Council chamber of the hegemony, confusion had become fear. Reports were flooding in from across the empire. Rebellions on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries. Attacks on supply lines. Sabotage of shipyards. Assassination of important officials. High Strategos Kethvor stood before the council, and for the first time in his 600 years, he had no explanation. "How is this possible?" demanded one of the elders. "So these species were pacified generations ago. The Vorath have not rebelled in 800 years. "We are investigating," Kethvor said. His voice was calm, but inside he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. The council had summoned him because the rebellions all had something in common. In each case, the rebels used similar tactics, similar weapons, similar organization, as if someone was teaching them. "It is the humans," Kethvor finally admitted. "We have captured several of their agents on different worlds. They are traveling through our empire, contacting subject species, providing weapons and training." Silence fell over the council. Then the eldest member spoke. "The humans are still resisting? After 10 years? That is not possible. They should have been fully pacified by now." "They should have," Kethvor agreed, "but they are not, and they are doing something no species has ever done before. They are spreading their resistance to others." Meanwhile, in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and on the dark sides of moons, humanity was building a fleet. Dr. Alexei Volkov, now the chief scientist of the resistance, had spent years studying Velothran technology. His teams had not just copied it, they had improved it. The first human-designed warship rolled out of production 15 years after the invasion. It was smaller than Velothran vessels, faster, and equipped with weapons that human engineers had invented themselves. They called it the Defiance. Alexei stood on the observation deck as the ship launched for its first test flight. Captain Chen stood beside him. "It is beautiful," she said. "It is just the beginning," Alexei replied. "We have 30 more in production. In 5 years, we will have hundreds." Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Can we actually win?" Alexei thought about the question. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no. The hegemony was too vast, too powerful, too ancient. Humanity was just one small species on one small planet. But things had changed. 40 worlds were now in rebellion. The hegemony was stretched thin, trying to maintain control. And every day, more subject species joined the fight. "I do not know if we can win," Alexei admitted, "but I know we can make them lose." On a Velothran command ship, a captured human spy was being interrogated. The admiral in charge was frustrated. The human had been questioned for days but had revealed nothing useful. "Why do you keep fighting?" the admiral demanded. "You cannot win. Your planet is occupied. Your species is enslaved. In another 100 years, you will be forgotten." The human looked up. He was bruised and exhausted, but his eyes still held the strange fire that the Velothrans had learned to fear. "You live for 800 years, the human said. "You think that makes you wise. We live for 80 and know every moment counts." He laughed even though it hurt. "You plan in centuries. We adapt in days. You see time as a river flowing slowly. We see it as a fire burning fast. And we will burn everything you have built before we let you take our future." The admiral had no response. He ordered the human executed. But the words stayed with him, and he began to wonder if perhaps the hegemony had made a terrible mistake when they attacked that small blue planet 15 years ago. In the council chamber, the elders reached a decision. For the first time in 3,000 years, they authorized total mobilization. Every ship, every soldier, every resource the hegemony possessed would be gathered for one purpose: the complete destruction of humanity. The Grand Armada would be assembled. 10,000 warships, the largest fleet in galactic history. They would travel to Sol and burn Earth to ash. They would hunt down every human in the galaxy. They would erase the species from existence. The war was about to enter its final phase, and both sides knew that only one would survive. 18 years had passed since the Velothran invasion. 18 years of occupation, resistance, and secret war. Now in the cold depths of space, the greatest fleet ever assembled was moving toward Earth. 10,000 warships, the Grand Armada of the Veletharan hegemony. Each vessel was a weapon of terrible power. Each crew had been trained for centuries of conquest. Together, they represented the full might of an empire that had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. High Strategos Kethivor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Through the viewport, he could see the endless ranks of his fleet stretching into the darkness. This was his moment. This was his purpose. The humans had caused more trouble than any species in hegemony history. They had sparked rebellions across 40 worlds. They had stolen technology and spread chaos through the empire. They had refused to accept their proper place. Now they would pay. "How long until we reach Sol?" Kethivor asked. 3 days, High Strategos, his aide replied. "Our scouts report the human defense fleet is gathering near Earth. They have approximately 600 vessels. 600 against 10,000. Kethivor allowed himself a cold smile. The humans had fought well, but this was the end. Even their strange determination could not overcome such odds. On Earth, Commander Yara Santos stood in the command center of the Resistance. Screens covered the walls showing data from across the galaxy. Most of that data was bad news. "The Armada will arrive in 72 hours, her tactical officer reported. "Our fleet is in position. But, Commander, we cannot win a direct battle. We are outnumbered 17-1. Santos nodded. She had known this day would come. 18 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Contact all team," she ordered. "Begin Operation Prometheus, Phase 2. Across the galaxy, hidden on 100 worlds, human agents received the signal. For years, they had been placing pieces on a vast chessboard. Now it was time to move them. On the hegemony homeworld of Velethra Prime, power stations exploded in the night. On the shipyard moon of Kethris, saboteurs destroyed the main fuel depot. On 30 different worlds, communication relays went dark at the exact same moment. Admiral Vethra, now commanding a section of the Grand Armada, received the reports with growing alarm. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Coordinated attacks, Admiral. Across the Empire. Our communication network is being disrupted." Vethra felt ice in his blood. The humans had been planning this. All those years of small attacks, all those agents they had sent across the galaxy, it had all been preparation for this moment. He tried to contact High Strategos Kethivor. The connection kept failing. On Earth, Dr. Alexei Volkov monitored the chaos from his command station. His teams had spent years infiltrating hegemony systems. They had planted viruses in communication networks. They had hidden explosives in critical facilities. They had turned the Empire's own infrastructure into a weapon. "Phase 2 is proceeding," he reported to Santos. "Hegemony communications are down across 200 systems. They cannot coordinate their response." Santos watched the tactical display. The Grand Armada was still coming, but now it was isolated, cut off from reinforcements. Unable to communicate with the rest of the Empire, the trap was set, but they still had to survive the battle. In deep space, the Terran Defense Fleet prepared for the fight of its life. Admiral Marcus Washington stood on the bridge of the TDS Defiance, the first human-built warship. Around him, 600 vessels held formation. 600 ships crewed by humans who had grown up under occupation, who had lost families and friends to the invaders, who had trained for years knowing that this day would come. "The enemy fleet will enter the system in 6 hours," Washington announced over the fleet channel. "I will not lie to you. We are outnumbered. We are outgunned. Many of us will not survive this battle." He paused. Through the view screen, he could see Earth floating in the darkness. That small blue marble was why they were here. That was what they were fighting for. "But we are not fighting to win today," Washington continued. "We are fighting to buy time. Every hour we hold them back is another hour for our allies across the galaxy. Every ship we destroy is one less ship to threaten our children. Today we show the universe what humans are made of." The fleet responded with a roar of voices. 600 ships, 600,000 humans, all ready to die for their world. The Velethron Armada emerged from warp space at the edge of the Sol system. Kethivor looked at the tiny human fleet standing against him and felt almost sad. These creatures had fought so hard. They had caused so much trouble. And now it would end. "All ships advance," he ordered. "Destroy them." The battle began with fire and fury. Human ships launched missiles and plasma beams at the advancing wall of Velothran warships. The first wave of attackers vanished in explosions of light. But more came. Always more. Admiral Washington watched his fleet being torn apart. Ships exploded around him. Friends died. Heroes fell. But no one retreated. No one surrendered. "Target their command ships," he ordered. "If we are going to die, we are taking their leaders with us." A squadron of human fighters dove toward Kethvor's flagship. They weaved through defensive fire with impossible skill. 3 were destroyed. Then 2 more. The last pilot, a young woman named Lieutenant Sarah Chen, daughter of Captain Diana Chen, who had spread rebellion across the galaxy, aimed her damaged fighter at the flagship's bridge. Kethvor saw her coming. In that final second, he saw her face on his screen. She was smiling. The explosion rocked the Eternal Dominion. Kethvor survived, but his confidence did not. These humans were insane. They were throwing themselves at his ships without hesitation. They were dying gladly if it meant taking Velothrans with them. For 3 hours, the battle raged. The human fleet was being destroyed, but they were inflicting terrible damage. Velothran ships burned. Velothran soldiers died. The Grand Armada was winning, but it was bleeding. Then something changed. "High Strategos," an officer reported, voice shaking. "New contacts emerging from warp space." Kethvor looked at his tactical display. His eyes widened. From the outer edges of the Sol system, ships were appearing. Not human ships. These designs were different. Vorath vessels, crude but powerful. Kelthari cruisers. Minsari frigates. Drothan warships. The rebellions across the galaxy had not just been about causing chaos. Humanity had been building an alliance, and now that alliance had come to fight. "Impossible," Kethvor breathed. "How did they coordinate this?" The answer came in the form of a transmission. It was broadcast on hegemony frequencies, using hegemony encryption codes that the humans had stolen years ago. Every ship in the system received it. Commander Yara Santos appeared on screen. Behind her stood representatives of 12 species, all former slaves of the hegemony, all now standing together. "Attention, Velothran forces," Santos said. "You came here to destroy humanity, but you forgot something important. You conquered 47 species. You made them all your enemies. You gave them all a reason to hate you." She gestured to the beings behind her. "Today, those enemies have united. Today, we stand together against you. And today, you learn the price of your empire." The Allied fleet attacked from every direction. The Grand Armada, already damaged from fighting the humans, found itself surrounded. Ships that should have been pacified slaves were now firing weapons with deadly accuracy. Kethvor gave orders, but his communications were jammed. He tried to rally his forces, but they were scattered and confused. For the first time in 12,000 years, a Velothran fleet was losing. As his flagship shuddered under enemy fire, Kethvor received one final transmission. It was from Commander Santos. "You came to finish what you started at Proxima Centauri," she said. 400,000 people died that day. We never forgot. We never forgave." Her eyes burned with 18 years of rage. "Let me show you how humanity says goodbye." Outside the viewport, the stars were filled with fire, and High Strategos Kethvor finally understood that his empire had made a terrible mistake. The Battle of Sol raged for 12 hours. In the cold darkness of space, 10,000 Velothran warships fought against an alliance that should not have existed. Human vessels, battered but unbroken, flew alongside ships crewed by species that had been slaves for centuries. Together, they were doing the impossible. High Strategos Kethvor watched his Grand Armada crumble. Ships that had conquered worlds were now burning wreckage. Officers who had served for hundreds of years were dying. The greatest military force in galactic history was being torn apart. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions." But there was nowhere to fall back to. The Allied fleet had surrounded them, and across the galaxy, the hegemony was burning. Reports came in fragments through the damaged communication network. The homeworld was under attack by Vorath forces. The main shipyard at Kethris had been captured by Kelthari rebels. 100 colony worlds had declared independence. The empire that had lasted 12,000 years was collapsing in a single day. On the bridge of the TDS Defiance, Admiral Washington fought to keep his damaged ship alive. Half his systems were offline. Fires burned in 3 sections. Most of his crew was dead or wounded, but they were still fighting. "Admiral, the Velithrin flagship is trying to retreat," his tactical officer reported. Washington looked at the display. Kethvor's ship, the Eternal Dominion, was pushing through the battle lines, trying to escape to warp space. If he got away, he could rally the remaining hegemony forces. He could rebuild. He could return. That could not be allowed. "All ships, target the flagship," Washington ordered. "Do not let him escape." What remained of the human fleet converged on Kethvor's ship. They were joined by Vorath cruisers and Mensari fighters. Together, they blocked every escape route. On the Eternal Dominion, Kethvor stood alone on his burning bridge. His officers were dead. His ship was crippled. Through the viewport, he could see the Allied fleet closing in. A communication screen flickered to life. Commander Yara Santos appeared. "Hi, Strategos Kethvor," she said. 18 years ago, you came to Earth and gave us a choice. Surrender or die." She leaned forward. "Now I give you the same choice." Kethvor stared at her. This human woman with her short lifespan and her soft body. She had outlasted him. She had defeated him. His entire understanding of the universe was shattered. "How?" he whispered. "How did you do this? You are just one species. You live for less than a century. Your technology was primitive. How did you defeat us?" Santos was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was not angry. It was almost sad. "You measured us by the wrong thing," she said. "You counted our ships and our soldiers and our years, but you never counted our hearts. You never understood what it means to be human." She stood and walked to the window of her command center. Behind her, the blue curve of Earth was visible. "We die," Santos continued. "Every one of us knows that our time is short, and that makes every moment precious. It makes every life valuable. It makes us fight harder than any species that thinks it has forever." She turned back to the screen. "You had 12,000 years and conquered 47 species. We had 18 years and freed them all." Kethvor had no response. His long life had taught him many things, but it had not prepared him for this. "I will not surrender," he finally said. "I am Velithrin. We do not bow to lesser species." Santos nodded. She had expected this answer. "Then goodbye, High Strategos. May you find whatever peace your kind believes in." She ended the transmission. Minutes later, the Eternal Dominion exploded under concentrated fire from the Allied fleet. Kethvor was dead. The Grand Armada was destroyed, and the war was finally turning. But the battle was not yet over. Across the Sol system, surviving Velithran ships still fought. Some tried to surrender. Others fought to the death. It took 3 more days to clear the system of enemy forces. When it was done, the Allies counted their losses. 300 human ships destroyed. Thousands of fighters gone. Nearly 200,000 humans dead, along with tens of thousands from allied species. But they had won. The fall of the Velithran hegemony did not happen overnight. It took years for the great empire to fully collapse. Some regions surrendered peacefully. Others fought bitter last stands. A few tried to negotiate and keep some of their power. Humanity led the formation of the Galactic Cooperative, a new alliance built not on conquest but on mutual respect. Every species had a voice. Every world had rights. The mistakes of the hegemony would not be repeated. Dr. Alexei Volkov lived to see the first human ambassador take her seat in the Cooperative Council. He was old now, his hair completely white, his body frail. But his eyes still sparkled with the same curiosity that had driven him to crack Velithran encryption all those years ago. Commander Yara Santos retired to a small farm in Brazil, not far from the ruins of São Paulo. She planted trees and raised chickens, and tried to forget the horrors she had seen. Sometimes she succeeded. Admiral Washington became the first human to command a combined fleet of all species. He spent his remaining years training officers from across the galaxy, teaching them the tactics that had defeated the hegemony. 100 years after the invasion, a monument was built on Proxima Centauri B. The planet had been restored, its cities rebuilt. New generations of humans living under alien stars. In the center of the capital city stood a great wall of black stone. On it were carved the names of the 400,000 who had died in the first Velathron attack. Below them were the names of everyone who had died in the 18 years of war that followed. Millions of names from dozens of species, all who had given their lives for freedom. At the base of the monument, in letters that could be read in every language of the cooperative, was a simple message. They thought we were weak because we die. They never understood. That is why we fight. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see the monument. Many were young, born after the war, learning about a history they had never experienced. They would stand before the wall of names and wonder at the courage of those who had fought against impossible odds. Some were old veterans, humans and aliens alike, who had survived the battles and carried the scars. They would touch the stone and remember friends lost and victories won. And some were children, running and playing among the memorial gardens, their laughter filling the air. Human children played with Vorath children, with Kelthari children, with the young of a dozen species. They did not see differences. They only saw friends. This was what the war had been for. This was why so many had died. An old Vorath warrior visited the monument once, late in his life. He had fought alongside humans in the Battle of Sol. He had lost 3 of his 4 arms to Velathran weapons, but he had survived. A young human girl approached him, curious about this scarred alien. "Were you in the war?" she asked. The Vorath looked at her. She had dark hair and bright eyes. She reminded him of the human soldiers he had known long ago. "Yes," he said. "I fought beside your ancestors." "Was it scary?" The old warrior thought about the question. He remembered the terror of battle, the pain of wounds, the grief of losing friends. But he also remembered something else. He remembered the moment when human ships had appeared over his frozen prison world. He remembered Captain Diana Chen standing on that crate, telling them they could be free. He remembered the hope that had filled his heart for the first time in his long life. "Yes, it was scary," he finally answered, "but the humans taught us something important. They taught us that being scared does not mean you cannot fight, that being small does not mean you cannot win, that even the mightiest empire can fall if enough people refuse to accept their chains." The girl nodded, trying to understand. Then she smiled and ran off to play with her friends. The old Vorath watched her go. Then he turned back to the monument and placed his remaining hand against the cold stone. "Thank you," he whispered to the names carved there. "Thank you for showing us the way." Above him, the stars shone bright. Once they had belonged to conquerors, now they belonged to everyone. And somewhere, in whatever place souls go when they leave the universe, Yara Santos and Alexei Volkov, and all the others who had fought and died, were finally at peace. They had won. Humanity had won. The galaxy was free.